So the conversation tonight about BEPS, base erosion and profit shifting, does or has had a fair bit of highlighting around certain global organisations. We've all seen those referred to in the media in recent times. And you do consider what impact that reporting, that media focus has upon their brands. It also takes you to thinking, and in preparing my remarks for tonight, around the topic, is this truly a tax issue that we're going to hear conversations about tonight? And you might say, well, that sounds a little oddly, given that you've got this panel of very fine and experienced tax professionals. Or is it something slightly different? So for me, in a way, the conversation around the BEPS feels like a little bit of the outcome so far around how business has globalised, how business has been significantly affected by the rapid development in technology, and in a way how competition, albeit at this time competition in a tax sense, exists in many forms, but particularly at country level. So for me, when I think about international competition, and let's move away again from tax for just a minute, you are drawn to, for example, global sports. So what do we see with global sports? You see countries using all of their endeavours in different ways to attract the key and emerging talent for that sport. And so you see players of different styles, coaches, team managers, all moving between countries in a manner which is they're being attracted by different forces. So what I see here tonight is a great conversation, a really good conversation around BEPS. But I also see a higher issue, which is around this international competition and how that may get explored by the panel as well.
Let's just talk about where this agenda came from. Michael, a little bit later we're going to watch Geoffrey Robertson, an excerpt from the hypothetical done around this issue, and he describes it as trying to grab profits that are in outer space and tax them. I mean, is that part of where this has come from? Is that the world has moved a lot faster than perhaps revenue collectors have been able to haven't been able to keep up?
Well, that's certainly true in the context of digital economy, for example. But I guess if you want to take a starting point, you can go back a few years and say that governments in the developed world started to be concerned about erosion of the corporate tax base. They saw multinational companies behaving, I guess, logically in an economic sense by taking advantage of tax arbitrage opportunities. Different laws in different countries produced more favourable outcomes. They started to, I guess, plan around tax treaties and to start taking advantage of, quite frankly, opportunities. Some countries provide tax incentives which make doing business in that country more favourable, and countries naturally compete on tax rates. So it was perceived that something had to be done, and so the OECD was entrusted with a project by the G7, G20, and now we have a very large team of talented people in the OECD, supported by tax officials and treasury officials from around the world, working very hard on what's called a 15-point action plan, which will deliver, according to a very ambitious timetable, recommendations on a whole range of issues to do with international tax.
So this is just the manifestation in tax of that cooperate versus compete dynamic that you see in international relations all the time. BEPS is everybody crossing their fingers, crossing their toes, hoping that everybody's going to go with the cooperate model when some people are likely to say, oh, we think this is a good chance for the compete model.
Australia's got a pretty good one. So I think in this case, Australia needs to be part of the game, because I think when there are these stories of a bunch of high-profile multinationals. There's stories that they're actually not paying any tax, well, you know, very little tax anywhere in the world. Taxpayers in Australia and a lot of other countries saying, well, hang on, that's not fair. And if taxpayers in Australia don't think it's fair, potentially could erode our voluntary compliance, which is very high. And it's a big deal for us. Australia needs to be part of it. Corporate tax matters for us more than other countries because we collect so much more than any other country relative to our tax base, our overall tax collection. So it's a big deal for us. We can't let it see wander out the door. It's important for the overall voluntary compliance for our system.
Certainly there are parts of their operation that are movable. I don't know, we haven't seen any evidence of any holus bolus movement of companies offshore for tax reasons. The notable cases that I'm aware of were for non-tax reasons. But certainly there is an issue in that there is a movement of some of the IP, some of the movable services and so forth out of Australia. So that's the base erosion part when it comes to large corporations. And that's something that the ATO is concerned about, and we're taking some action on. So, for example, you know, if you're a energy and resources company now in some parts of Australia, if you work for them and you want a new pair of safety boots, you go onto the company's computer system and you ask them, please send me a new pair of work boots to my work site. That order goes to Singapore, and the boots are sent from Singapore to you. Or they're arranged to be sent to you by Singapore. Now, there's a big difference between those two things. One is tax competition, and the other is just base erosion.
And I think all of the MNC community broadly really sees this as an opportunity through the OECD to modernise those. I spend most of my time at the front line working through the incredible complexity of all of this asymmetry that we're talking about, which is fraught with difficulty and fraught with uncertainty. So there is a real urgency around simplification, I think, and ensuring that these developments at OECD level give us a better, more globally uniform system. So undoubtedly that's the opportunity.
It's very difficult to give it a definition, and it usually only lands as to whether it's aggressive or whether it's in fact transfer pricing after there is a lot of examination of the facts, and that's a very difficult issue, and that can take a very long time during a risk review.
To give you some scale of the numbers, India in the 2011-2012 financial year mounted 2,500 transfer mispricing cases, prosecuted over 1,300 of those, collected $7.8 billion back on those adjustments. China, by comparison, only mounted about 200 cases, got about $200 million back. Global Financial Integrity, if you look at their report on just trade misinvoicing out of China, so that's one form of cheating, about 650 billion was their last estimate of what goes out of China, and of that they clawed back 200 million of 650 billion. So the game for developing countries is very high stakes here, and I think they've got a lot more skin in the game, and I think if the OECD countries want to say, well, look, these rules work for us and we don't care, I think it's going to push down the path of unilateral action again.
I opened the evening by talking about our new brand for Chartered Accountants Australia and New Zealand. Underpinning that brand is very much a focus on the knowledge network, that of over 100,000 members coming together, being able to share their experiences, and also being able to attract the most contemporary thinking into that network. For me, you've just seen that example come to life tonight. You know, the panellists, the experience that's been drawn together has really allowed us to be entertained as well as educated of the topic of the night. For me, I've learnt a bit. I've learnt really around three themes. The first, which I opened with, which was around, was this as much a tax issue as it is a discussion around international competition between countries? Secondly, we heard at great length that the systems of regulation around taxation, like many of our systems of regulation, perhaps are drawn from times of the past, and particularly with the advancements in technology growing our business, those times of the past are no longer particularly relevant or helpful. And thirdly, we also heard quite a bit around transfer pricing. What does it actually look like and feel like? And hopefully we were expecting it to be fairly easily identified, and yet we've learned, no, that's probably not the case. We also were pleased to see, I was pleased to see, that in a whole debate around taxation, not once did we hear a section or a clause or any of that sort of stuff that rattles off the tongue of those experienced. We also learnt that Rob has brought his white paper here tonight, and we're very grateful for that. It's on his table. I haven't sneaked a look at it, Rob, but thank you for doing that. So let me draw a conclusion again. Ellen, thank you very much for doing this with us. We're really appreciative for your collaboration with us. I do feel perhaps there is a new career growing for you in the space of taxation. You're rattling it off as though you're just an old hand, so I look forward to seeing that grow into that area. But particularly to our panellists, sorry, I should say firstly to Michael, thank you very much for setting that context. Hearing up front where the quick wins might be, where perhaps the obstacles are as well. So again, you've done us tremendously well, Michael. Thank you. And to each of our panellists, thank you for your knowledge. Thank you for your experience. Thank you also for the good humour in which you delivered it. And can I ask everyone to express a round of applause? Thank you.